Chapter 9. We started at Betty Sue's house in the backyard, where Leslie had stood dancing in the sun earlier and singing about how the Wicked Witch couldn't get us anymore. The wind had died down somewhat, perhaps out of respect for our search. There were a few scraps of paper caught on the back fence, and Stan gathered those up first and studied them closely, but they were too little and too few to tell a tale. We had to move on to the next backyard, and into the next street, searching for bits of the notebook pages. Yeah, we all thought Stan had gone way out on a limb with his Betty Sue obsession, but we were going to search for those pieces of paper as long as the sun was up, and maybe even into the night, 'cause there was nothing else to do. The madness began around 5:30. We had talked so much about Betty Sue that maybe only our mind's eye saw it. I am only sorry that it had to be me who screamed first. I did see her, though. I saw Betty Sue. I think. We were moving around a house, Pepper and I. Stan and Helter were across the street, picking through the bushes. It was only after I saw what I did that I realized we were circling Leslie's house. Maybe it was a coincidence. Anyway, Pepper had just spotted a scrap of our paper stuck on a branch in a tree, and was reaching up to free it when I turned toward the bathroom window of the house. It was one of those fat, fuzzy windows that make you look disfigured no matter how beautiful you are. I stared at it a second, blinking, because I thought I saw something move behind it. There was nothing there. A moment later it appeared again. A head of bright red hair swept across the glass. No one in Salem, except Betty Sue, had had hair that color. The image was just there for a second. I should have screamed then, but I wasn't sure what I'd just seen. I didn't want to make a fool of myself. I glanced over at Pepper. He was preoccupied. I decided to take a closer look. I should have known better. I'd seen enough horror movies to know that the absolute worst thing you can do is go off and investigate on your own. But that's what I did. I stepped around the back of the house and turned the knob on the door. It was open. I stepped inside, the late Leslie Bell's house. "Hello?" I called. Deep silence, Betty Sue's calling card. A silence so sharp it could cut. I moved forward, through the kitchen and into a hallway that I instinctively knew led to the bathroom. I felt something tighten around my throat. A garrote of silver wire spun from a nightmare, recorded in black ink on a page of white notebook paper. But the feeling was only in my mind. Betty Sue's stories were only in her mind. Why should her mind have the right to overlap with mine? I hardly knew her, I thought. What was our common denominator? Then I stood in the bathroom before a drawn shower curtain. The thick, fuzzy window stood behind the curtain, and beyond that was the outside, where there were trees and sunshine. I lined up the order of things in my mind so that I would know if there was something in between them that wasn't supposed to be there, like a dead girl. I pulled back the curtain. There was nothing. Nothing but a whisper at my back. I whirled, but there was nothing, except a shadow in the bathroom mirror, a moving shadow of red and black, moving out of sight. Was it Betty Sue? I don't know. I didn't care. I screamed. That brought the guys. Pepper found me first, but before I could get my voice back, Helter and Stan were in the hallway as well. I must have screamed pretty loud. "What is it?" Pepper demanded. I pointed a shaky arm. "She was here." "Who?" Stan asked. "Her," I gasped. "Who's her?" Pepper said. "The witch," I said. I stared at each of them. I saw her. "Are you sure?" Stan asked me. I nodded. "I saw something, I swear it." I grabbed Pepper's arm with one hand. My other hand was stuffed full of scraps of Betty Sue's notebook pages. God, she's alive. Helter cocked his rifle. "Let's get her." "No, wait," Stan said. "We're not going to shoot her." "We're not," Helter said. "I am. Pepper, are you coming?" "Where am I coming?" Pepper asked. "Where is she?" "Don't go," I told him. Pepper let go of my arm. "I've got to," he said. "Now, where did you see her?" I gestured helplessly. "Just here? Through the window? In the mirror? I don't know." "She's dead meat," Helter swore, scanning the area with beady eyes. I turned to Stan. "Stop them," I pleaded. "We'll look for her together," Stan said. "No violence." We left the hallway for the front of the house. Leslie's place was a simple two-story, about twice the size of Betty Sue's. Helter's trigger finger was sweating. He ran ahead of us and up the stairs out of sight, Pepper not far behind. Stan had lost control of the group. "Who the hell let that guy carry a gun?" Stan cursed, his extra weight slowing him down. As if in response, a shot was fired. "Oh no," I moaned. We caught up with Helter and Pepper in an upstairs bedroom. Double doors leading onto a small balcony were lying wide open. There was a bullet hole through the center of the right door. I almost got her, Helter cried, peering out the side of the door. Pepper crouched by his side. Did you see her? Pepper asked. Sure, Helter said. Didn't you see her? I don't know, Pepper said. I saw a red and black blur. That was her, Helter said. Stan strode straight for the balcony door and looked straight out. I don't see anything, he said. She was here, Helter exclaimed. He jumped out onto the balcony and surveyed the length of the street. She must have ducked into another yard. Are you sure you saw her? Stan asked. Do you think I'm seeing things? Helter asked, insulted. He was breathing hard. Sweat stained his shirt, and he had a wild-eyed, vacant look as if no one was home. The vacantness had begun with the explosion at the gas station. I think it's possible, Stan said. How did she get off the roof? She climbed down, Helter said. He shook his head in confusion and disgust. You're the one who's been telling us all along that she's a witch. Well, I believe you now. We've got to get her before she gets us. He shielded his eyes from the twilight sun low in the sky and peered across the street. Then suddenly he jumped up and pointed. There she is, right there. Come on, Pepper. Helter and my boyfriend dashed downstairs, anxious to slay the evil monster. I didn't see anybody across the street, but I had started to chase after them when Stan put a hand on my arm to stop me. Let them go, he said. There's nobody there. But I already saw her, I protested. I believe you, Stan said. Then what are you saying? I asked. He gestured to the scraps of paper I had collected. I had Pepper's pile as well now. I handed them over. Stan stared at them a moment and then indicated we should follow the guys after all. We went downstairs and outside. Stan still had the burnt diary tucked into his belt. Maybe I can piece together a story or two in the meantime, he said. The guys had disappeared into a neighbor's backyard. Stan and I were halfway across the street when another shot rang out. My heart jumped into my mouth. Stan remained calm. In the distance, Helter howled in disgust. She could be here, I said, if half of what you say is true. Oh, she's here, Stan said, studying the scraps as if they were pieces of a puzzle, which indeed they were. But she's not going to be caught by Helter and his gun. This is her story. You're talking about how she was able to make things happen by writing about them? Yes. Did she write us into this empty world? Stan stopped for a moment as he fitted a piece against one another. That's what I believe. Why? I asked anxiously. I couldn't say I agreed with him, but I no longer disagreed with him, which is about halfway toward belief, I guess. Something had moved inside the bathroom window, and it had red hair. Do you mean why us? Stan asked. Or why do this to anybody? Both questions. Except for you, we all knew her, Stan said, still fiddling with the pages. We all must have done something to hurt her. Let's take Leslie, for example. It's not hard to figure out how she pissed Betty Sue off. When they were young, they were best friends. But we saw in the diary how when Leslie grew up, she stole the boys Betty Sue was interested in away from her. What about the rest of you? I asked. Just a second. I might be able to give you something specific. Stan stopped again. This time he sat on the curb and arranged his scraps on the asphalt and held them together with tape he had taken from Betty Sue's room. Down the street I could see Helter and Pepper running and shouting to each other, jumping fences and pointing. Perhaps it was because of what Stan had just said, but I suddenly had the strong impression that they were behaving like puppets. I think we now have a story about Helter, Stan said, taping the last of the scraps together. I came around and peered over his shoulder. I had to squint. Stan had sat in the shade and the sun was falling toward the western horizon. Less than 2 hours and it would be dark. For the moment, the wind had died down to the gentlest of breezes. The scraps belonged together. The page was complete. Before we read it all the way through, Stan said, I want to tell you something about Helter and Betty Sue's relationship. I gleaned this from what was left of the diary. Because of all the damage, I can't give you exact details, but I'm quite sure I'm correct. Correct about what? I asked. Helter raped Betty Sue. God, are you sure she didn't make him do it? Stan nodded. You're beginning to think like me, and there could be some truth in what you're suggesting. I think Betty Sue taunted him toward committing the act, but then I think he caught even her by surprise. Her tone, in the bits and snatches I could put together, was very angry. Then she can't be all-powerful, I said, if she couldn't control Helter. Stan glanced toward the lowering sun. When he spoke, there was nothing but despair in the sound of his voice. She couldn't control the butterflies, he said softly, until she put them in her jar. I sat beside him and shivered. It was ironic that here we were in the midst of a mystical discussion, and down the street, Pepper and Helter were locked in what they thought was a life-and-death pursuit. I just hoped Helter didn't accidentally shoot Pepper. I lowered my head. "Let's read her story," I said. We read in silence. Holt Skater takes a walk. Holt Skater lived beside a stone wall that was both wide and tall. He would look up at it each day as he walked to his farm field, and he would say to himself, "It is not so tall that I could not climb it, not this wall." Holt did not like the field where he had to work and toil in the mud and soil. He did not like it at all and wanted to escape over the tall wall. One day he noticed a tree beside the wall, a tree that was very tall, and he climbed to the tree and jumped onto the wall and glimpsed the other side. There he saw streams and fields, where the food would be easy to pick for frequent meals. But at the foot of the wall he saw thorn bushes instead of fields, and he could not climb down and walk beside the streams. Then he said to himself, "I will walk along the wide wall until I come to a tree that is tall." He thought that he could climb down onto the other side and forget his work and hide. Holt went for a long walk along the wall. He walked and forgot the other side of the wall, and the tree that helped him up, the tree that was tall. But the thorn bushes did not stop, and he began to grow hot. He had walked so far without a hat, and he wished he could go back. But he looked, and the thorn bushes were now on both sides, and he knew if he jumped into them, they would tear his hide. He turned around and tried to go back along the wall without a hat, but the wall stayed tall without staying wide. And soon the wall was so narrow, it was like a walk on a dangerous ride. The wall got narrower, and he said to himself, "I do not understand how I could have turned around and not gotten back." Holt was now scared, and he began to shake. He knew if the wall got too narrow, he would fall off, and the thorns would get him like a rake. He turned back again, the other way, and the wall narrowed more, so that he was now sure he would fall and be sore. Then he turned once more, and the wall became like a razor, and he began to cry for someone to be his savior, but it was too late for Holt, who had brains that were like steel bolts. The wall was now a razor that could cut like laser, and Holt finally slipped, one leg this way and one leg that way. And what happened to him is not easy to say. He fell and prayed to Jesus, but in the end he was just a bloody mess made up of two pieces. "Sick!" I cried when we finished. "Helter skelter," Stan said. "Holt Skater." "What's going to happen to him?" I asked, and there were tears in my eyes. I didn't believe any of it. Witchcraft, sorcery, curses, it was all BS. But Betty Sue's stories, the way they were worded, the rhymes, the endings, they had gotten inside me, and I couldn't get them out, any more than a butterfly could get out of a sealed jar. "Helter raped Betty Sue," Stan said. "I'm sure she's thought up something special for him." When you thumbed through the pile of papers on Betty Sue's desk, the story of Latiball was on top. What story was second? "I believe it was the one we just read," Stan said. I jumped to my feet. "Let's get Helter. Let's not let him out of our sight." Stan got up slower. "Do you believe me, what I said about her?" I hesitated. "Yes." He seemed relieved for a second, but then his face fell. "What difference does it make?" "It does make a difference. We have to know what's going on. Only that way we can prevent it." I paused. "We can stop it, can't we?" He smiled at me. He had a nice smile. He was a nice guy. I had just reassured him, and now I was asking for his reassurance. "I'm sure there must be a way," he said. He held up the remainder of the scraps of papers we had collected so far. "We need to get the rest of these stories together." "Let's get Helter first," I said. We started up the street in the direction of the boys, but I stopped after a minute. "Stan, was there any more mention of Pepper and Betty Sue's diary?" I asked. It was Stan's turn to hesitate. "Yes." "What did she say about him?" "I could only pick out bits and pieces," he said. "Come on, what did he do to her?" Stan was stubborn. "I don't know. Ask Pepper. He'd know." "Yeah," I said thoughtfully. I suppose he would. Chapter 10. We caught up with Helter and Pepper as they were nearing Salem High. They were excited. They had caught sight of Betty Sue 3 times. Sort of. She moved fast, they said. The way they talked, she must have been riding a broom. Stan tried to reason with them. "Why haven't you been able to catch her?" Stan asked. "She's too slippery," Helter said, his eyes practically bulging out of his head. He still had his rifle and revolver. Obviously, he wasn't about to share his weapons with Pepper. "She went into the school," Pepper said with conviction. He pointed toward the administration building at the front of the campus. Between the building and us, it was a teacher's parking lot, an asphalt square 100 feet away. "Honey, she's not really there," I said. Pepper had gone from being a skeptic to a believer quick, but I could understand that. There had been something between him and Betty Sue. His guilt had confirmed that long before Leslie died. He had tried to deny it as best he could, while there was a chance. But now that Betty Sue had appeared, he wanted her silenced immediately. He pointed at the teacher's parking lot. "Do you see those footprints?" he asked. The wind had swept a quarter-inch of sand onto the lot. It would have been impossible to cross it without leaving tracks. Perhaps Betty Sue couldn't do the impossible, or maybe it was just part of her plan. In either case, footprints stretched all the way across the asphalt to the front steps of the school. "Those don't belong to you guys?" Stan asked, and even he seemed amazed. "They're hers, damn it," Helter said. He cocked his rifle. He was forever cocking it. I think it was a macho thing to do. "Let's get her." "You are not going to shoot her," Stan told him. "I'll take her alive," Helter said grimly, "if she lets me." We started forward. I couldn't believe what was happening. Perhaps that would keep me from seeing her, my lack of belief. But I could see her footprints clearly enough. I traced them as I walked, and from the distance between them it didn't appear that Betty Sue had been in a hurry as she crossed the parking lot. Pepper was wrong about Betty Sue having gone into the administration building. A fine coat of sand covered the entire campus. It was clear her steps led around to the back of the campus. It was so easy to follow her it made me suspicious. I wondered if she was leading us into a trap. My suspicions leapfrogged near the gymnasium when the track suddenly split and went in two separate directions. We stared at them dumbfounded. One veered toward the back of the gym, the other toward the girls' showers. "How did she do that?" Helter asked. Stan squatted and studied both sets of prints in the sand. "These were made by someone wearing boots," he muttered. "So?" Pepper asked. "Who cares?" Stan looked up. "She had boots on when she died." I chuckled. "So? We know now her body in the fire was a hoax." Stan stood. "It was a real body." "Look," Helter said, agitated. "Let's talk later. She's getting away. Let's split up. Pepper, you and Rox follow the prints leading to the gym. Stan and I will search the girls' showers." "We shouldn't split up," Stan said sternly. "We have to split up," Helter shouted. "Let's just do it." I put my hand on Helter's shoulder. "We can split up if I can go with you," I told him. "Rox?" Pepper said. "It's nothing personal," I said, catching Stan's eye. "I don't care who comes with me," Helter said, raising his rifle and striding forward, "as long as they don't get in my way." "This is a mistake," Stan said, resigned to the decision. I followed Helter, but had to jog to keep up with him. We chased the impressions in the sand to the green metal door leading to the showers. They stopped there, of course. The door was unlocked but closed over. Helter pulled it back. There was no sand inside, no wind. It was dark and cool, and my skin cringed as the door slowly closed behind us. I had never liked gym. I hated exercise. I hated to shower in front of other girls. I hated gym teachers. I got very poor grades in the class. "Do you hear anything?" I whispered to Helter. "Shh," he said. He touched my hand and scanned the rows of lockers. "She's here." "How do you know?" I asked. He drew in a shuddering breath. "I feel her." He looked at me. "I feel what I felt at the gas station before Leslie died." "What was that?" "Evil," he said. We continued forward. The dark was damp, and the faint smell of sweat that hung in the air was like a memory of carefree times. An open bathroom door yawned black on our left. The closed gray lockers stretched out on our right. I indicated the bathroom, and Helter shook his head. I was relieved. I didn't want to go in there either. We were beside the gym teacher's office when Helter made me halt. "What is it?" I asked. He leaned his head to the side. "Did you hear that?" "What?" "It was the sound of wood bumping against wood." He paused. "I think she's in the equipment cage." "I didn't hear anything." He put a finger to my lips. "You stay here. I want to investigate." I brushed his finger aside. "We have to stick together." He leaned in close and spoke in my ear. "I know she's in there, Roxanne. I know why she's there. I hurt her once. Now she wants to hurt me. I can't take you with me." "She made you hurt her," I said, grabbing his arm. "Listen to me. We shouldn't even be in here alone. Let's go get the others. We can be out and back in 2 minutes. He let his hand slide down to the trigger on his rifle. He was petrified, that was obvious, but he also appeared to be resolved to face whatever lay around the corner. "No," he said. "She'll kill you," I hissed. "Your story was next." His eyes met mine. The news didn't seem to surprise him. "We'll see who gets killed." He gently pushed me down onto one of the long wooden benches that ran in front of the lockers. "Stay here." I let him walk away. I don't know why. I shouldn't have. Yeah, actually, I do know why. I was scared. Helter vanished in the dark. I sat there feeling like a coward, so I got back up. Yet I didn't feel like chasing after Helter or entering the equipment locker. I was afraid he might accidentally shoot me. I decided to swing around the back of the locker room, through the showers to see what was there. I sneaked up the narrow aisle on my toes. The pale twilight coming in through the high, dirty windows was a small help. Once I stumbled and banged my shin. The shock made me recoil in pain. I had almost forgotten about the bullet wound in my right thigh. The showers waited for me in shadow. I stepped hastily inside and hugged the tile wall as I scampered toward the far end. I could hear my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps, and nothing else. It seemed to take forever to reach the far end. I think the main reason was because as I walked, I was burdened with memory, a memory of Betty Sue. There was no mystery why it came to me right then and there. My only real encounter with Betty Sue had occurred in these showers. We didn't have gym class together, and I still don't know why she was playing volleyball with us that day, but she must have had a reason. Maybe she was making up a class. Anyway, she was good at the game. A slender and tall girl, she had quick reflexes and excellent coordination. She was on my team, and she was the main reason we won. But her skills didn't make her popular. The whole period, I doubted if the other girls said 5 words to her. I know I hardly even looked at her. I hated being out there on the volleyball court when I could be lying on my bed at home listening to the radio. But the few times I did glance over at her, I remember wondering how she got her curly hair so bright. The color certainly didn't look natural. Then class was over and we went inside to shower. Betty Sue and I were the last 2 girls to get under the water. The gym teacher had made us collect all the balls and put them away in the equipment locker. She took a shower not far or close to mine. Once more, I hardly looked over at her. I didn't want her to think I was queer or anything, but I did see enough of her to know she wasn't simply thin, but bony, almost to the point of starvation. She was also extremely pale. She finished with her shower first, but didn't walk out the way she had come in. She deliberately walked past me and handed me a bar of soap. I grunted thank you and paid the gesture little heed, until Betty Sue was out of sight. Then I glanced down at the soap. I could hardly believe what I saw. A baby, a crying baby, in exquisite detail had been carved into the face of the bar. It could have been an artist's square of ivory she handed me. I had known Pepper about a week then, and I was pregnant, although I didn't know it. Betty Sue would be dead in less than a week. I walked out the same way Betty Sue had vanished. I wanted to ask her where she had gotten the soap. It appeared to be a one-of-a-kind item. The figure of the baby had clearly not been preformed with the bar, but had been carved in it later. I peered around the edge of the showers and saw Betty Sue drying herself in front of a mirror. At least, that's what I thought she was doing at first. I stopped myself from speaking when I saw she was drawing on the naked reflection of herself in the mirror with another bar of soap. This bar was dyed red. In fact, the soap was the same shade of red as Betty Sue's hair when her hair was wet. Mixed with water, the soap dripped off the mirror like running blood. I didn't say anything. I just dropped my bar on the floor and walked away, sick to my stomach. Betty Sue had been soaping her reflection in the area of her stomach. And that's what I remembered as I paused in the dark. To my left was the mirror where Betty Sue had colored her reflection. It was dark, and my own reflected image was even darker. Betty Sue had stood out as a silhouette against the sun this morning, and now that the sun was going down, I stood as a shadow of that day almost 5 weeks earlier. I could distinguish the faint outline of the dyed soap on the mirror still. Betty Sue had drawn a jar around her reflected belly. What did she pretend to fill this one with, I wondered. Helter screamed. A shot rang out. "Oh no," I cried. I spun and ran in the direction of the noise. Another shot toward the dark, followed in a quick succession by 2 others. All the while Helter screamed as if an alien monster with claws and tentacles and teeth as long as knives was bearing down on him, coming at him without a pause, impervious to his shots. He screamed like someone dying. But when I finally saw him, he was all in one piece. He'd had his rifle out and was blasting away. In the flash of the bullets, I saw and heard glass shatter at the far end of the building. In an instant, I realized what was happening. He had glimpsed his own reflection in the big primping mirror by the exit and spooked himself. "Helter!" I called. He shrieked. He didn't hear me. He fired once more, and his bullet ricocheted dangerously. Then I heard the clicking of his empty trigger as he tried to unload shells that were no longer in the chamber. He stumbled backward as if before a towering beast. Then he fell and landed on his butt and squirmed back against the bench that wasn't going to move out of the way for him. Desperately, he reached for the revolver in his belt. "Helter!" I screamed. "She's not there!" Too late. He grabbed the revolver. Too soon he fired it. He must have been out of his mind with fear. He grabbed the revolver and the trigger and accidentally shot himself while the gun was still in his belt. "Ah!" he cried. The revolver fell from his hand onto the concrete floor as he rolled into a ball of agony. I was at his side in a moment. I tried to hold him, to comfort him, but he kept thrashing. The door flew open behind me and remained open. It was Stan and Pepper. A shaft of evening light shone down on Helter through the open door. The top of his pants was soaked dark red. I couldn't help but remember Stan's prediction. "Helter raped Betty Sue. I'm sure she's thought up something special for him." Helter had shot himself in the groin. "Oh, Jesus," I moaned, my hands already soaked with his blood. "Help me!" Stan and Pepper ran to Helter's side. Stan tried to roll him over on his back so that he could figure out the extent of the injury, but Helter was in too much pain. He kept shaking violently. "It's no good," he cried. "It's no good." "You're going to be all right," Stan said, and there wasn't a whisper of truth in the words, and he knew it. Helter clawed Stan's hand, the veins on his neck bulging like wires, his contorted features drenched with sweat. He was crying, and I was crying, and it was horrible. "Kill me," Helter begged Stan. Stan shook his head, shocked. "We're going to help you. We're not going to kill you." Helter started to sob. "Do you know where I've been shot? You have to kill me. I'll die anyway." He reached feebly for his revolver, but Stan pulled it away. "Please," Helter pleaded. Stan put his arms around Helter and held him as if he were an injured child. When he spoke next, he sounded as if he was trying to convince himself. "We'll go to the drugstore," Stan said. "We'll get medicine. We'll put you to sleep, and we'll get the bullet out. You'll live. You'll be fine." Helter's voice cracked. "I want to die. I can't live like this in this horrible place." A spasm of pain shook his frame, and his spine arched as he let out a deafening howl. "Stop it! Somebody stop it!" Stan stared desperately at Pepper and me. "What can we do?" Pepper was the color of chalk. "I don't know. There's nothing we can do." He shook his head and bit his lower lip. "We should do what he wants us to do." Stan looked faint. "We can't just kill him. I can't." Pepper was panting. "I can't either." "No," I cried. "Let's not talk this way. Do something to help him." "That's the problem," Stan yelled, still hugging Helter. "We can't help him. No one can." A bloody hand reached out and touched my hand. Helter screwed his face up at me, his breath coming in burning gasps. He spoke to me as if I was a god. "Make it end, Roxanne," he whispered. I held his eyes for a moment. What did I see? What he saw in the mirror when he shot at it in terror? Perhaps. Certainly, I saw something that had been shattered beyond repair. Maybe that's what Betty Sue really was. A walking wave of destruction. You could not get out of its way. You could only bow before it. I came to a decision. "Leave us alone," I said flatly. "What are you going to do, Rox?" Pepper asked. "He's hurt real bad," Stan said. "I know," I said, and squeezed Helter's hand. "Go now, the two of you. I'll be out in a minute." They stared at me in amazement. Then Stan eased out from under Helter and let him lay on the floor. Stan stood beside Pepper, staring at Helter, at me. I don't know which frightened the two of them more. They backed away, practically holding on to each other, and vanished. I turned back to Helter. "What a screwed up day this has been," I said. He nodded. His breathing had become a bit steadier, and he was no longer shaking, but he was still in terrible pain. There was no reason it should go on. "I wish I hadn't woken up," he gasped. I know the feeling. I picked up the revolver, surprised at its weight. I had never cared for guns. They were only good for one thing, which was a bad thing. Helter watched me as I cocked the hammer. "Was she that strange to be with?" I asked. He nodded weakly. "She was like a worm. You would hold her, but when you let go, you felt like she had slipped inside your guts and started to grow." He glanced down at his pants and whimpered. "She was bad." "Why did you go out with her?" I asked. "Because she would," he coughed. "She would do anything." "Did you rape her?" He shook his head, and he was so sorry it broke my heart. "I don't know what I did. It was one of those nights where I felt her inside my head and I couldn't get her out. That's why I was afraid when Stan started talking about her. She knew how to get inside. She knew all the right doors. I was just trying to get her out." He coughed again. "I guess I did rape her. I wish I had killed her." "I wish you had too, Helter," I said gently. I raised the gun to his forehead. "Close your eyes." "I'll close mine." He nodded. "Thank you, Roxanne." "It's no problem." I pulled the trigger. I killed him. I never knew I could kill someone. But then I remembered I had gone for an abortion only that morning. Maybe it had prepared me. I dropped the gun and stood up. I could feel his blood all over me, but I had yet to open my eyes. I turned and walked in the direction where I believed the door was. I was not sure I would find it. Maybe Betty Sue had changed its location, I thought. She knew all the right doors. I felt like I had just passed through a major door. Now I would find out whether I had taken the wrong one.